Welcome to the Project Mayhem Bronco Channel. I started this channel to document the progress of the restoration of my 1979 Ford Bronco, nicknamed Project Mayhem. This introductory video will cover the history of the Bronco, as well as my future plans for the project. So you may ask, why do I call it Project Mayhem?
Sir, the first rule of Project Mayhem is you do not ask questions, sir.
No real reason, just a fan of the movie Fight Club and thought it was kind of clever. If you're a fan of the movie too, you'll get the reference about it being clever. Anyway, here's a little history about the Bronco. My parents bought the Bronco new in 1979. Here's a picture of my mom standing next to her new Bronco. They kept the vehicle stock and used it as a daily driver. And then in the summer of 1988, when they were getting ready to have it repainted, the engine with a little over 100,000 miles on it blew a head gasket. They decided it was time for a new vehicle for themselves, so they bought a new Bronco, and they gave this one to me to fix up. As a 17-year-old going into my senior year of high school, you can imagine how happy this made me. I ended up rebuilding the 400 that was in it with a few minor upgrades. I put an Edelbrock Performer camshaft, an intake manifold, and a Holley 650 carburetor. I also put a small suspension lift on it, and I stuck with the 33-inch tires. I'd pile a bunch of friends into the Bronco, and it didn't matter if we were going off-road or camping or just cruising around town. We always had a lot of fun in the Bronco. By the early 90s, I was getting pretty tired of the primer paint job. I picked up a few dents along the way, and even got rear-ended at one point, so I decided to take an auto body class. I ended up doing all of the body work myself. I stripped down the body, took the grill off, all the trim off, and then I took it over to a local paint shop to have them spray the color on. I stayed with the blue and white, and had them paint inside and out. I laid down new carpet and new upholstery, and I was really happy with how it looked for the next couple of years. By this time I had a 3-inch lift kit on it, and was going back and forth between 33 and 35-inch tires. I had replaced several of the major components, including the 9-inch rear end on 2 separate occasions. Just couldn't keep those things together. And then one day in 1996, while my wife was driving it, she was getting on the freeway, and the passenger side rear axle snapped right at the axle bearing, sending the axle flange, the drum, and the tire down the freeway about a quarter mile and turning the Bronco into a tripod sitting on the side of the freeway. Thankfully she wasn't injured, but by this point I was done with 9-inch rear ends. I didn't want to replace it for a third time. At this point I decided the best thing to do would be to upgrade to 3/4 ton axles. So I went junkyard shopping. I ended up finding a 1979 F250 similar to this one. I took the Dana 60 rear end and the 8-lug Dana 44 front end off of it, and at the same time I also purchased a 4-inch Superlift soft ride suspension and new shocks all the way around. For the next several years I was really happy with the Bronco. The suspension was working well, the axles were working great, it was looking nice. The only problem was that the engine that I had rebuilt in high school 13 years before was starting to show its age. It was consuming oil, it was leaking, it was losing power, it was starting to run a little bit rough. And then one day on my way home from work, a valve spring broke and dropped the valve down into the engine. It touched the piston and pretty much destroyed the lower end of the engine. I ended up getting a donor engine to rebuild. I pulled out the old engine, transmission, and transfer case out of the Bronco. I put it down on my garage floor, and that was it. That's how it's been sitting since 2001. Flash forward nearly 20 years. And this is what it looks like today. Unfortunately, the years have not been kind to the Bronco. This is what the Bronco looked like when I decided to get it back on the road. At this point, the engine, transmission, and transfer case had been sitting on my garage floor since 2001. As I dug into it to see what it would take to get it back on the road, I discovered a lot of surface rust on the frame and on the bottom of the body. Nothing that couldn't be fixed, but I knew if I didn't take care of it now, it would only get worse. I also found that all of the body mounts were dried out and rotting away, and that all of the wiring was corroded and brittle. After sitting for so long, I knew there was going to be a lot of rust that I couldn't get to fix. So at this point, I decided the best way to proceed was to do a full off-frame restoration. The interior needs some work. It needs new carpet, the seats reupholstered, all of the normal stuff you would do with a restoration. But everything's there, and it's complete, and it shouldn't be too bad to fix. Unfortunately, I can't say the same about the exterior. As you can see, the tailgate is a complete loss. It's going to have to be replaced. I know these are hard to come by for factory originals, so I'll probably end up having to go with a reproduction. If anyone has any experience with any companies that make them, or know of any suppliers for them, please let me know in the comments below. In addition to the tailgate, the passenger side quarter panel will also have to be replaced. Not only is there rot on top of the rail here, but the bottom of the fender is also damaged by the tire hitting it when the axle snapped. The driver's side quarter panel I believe can be saved. If I cut out the rot and weld in some fresh metal, I believe I'll be able to save it. If it doesn't work, I'll have to replace it, but if possible, I'm hoping to save the factory quarter panel. Over the passenger door is another bad area of rot. I'll have to cut out the bad metal there and weld in some new steel. But the one that really bothers me is the one under the passenger door, right by the drip rail there. I'll have to cut that area out and weld in new steel in there, but there's a lot of angles involved. Not sure exactly how I'm going to do that yet. If you have any tricks or tips that might help me do that, please comment below. I'm not planning to do any of the body work until after I have the Bronco running and back on the road. When the time comes to paint, I'm going to stick with blue and white, but I'm going to go to a darker shade of blue similar to this one. This color is called Maximum Steel. It's a very dark metallic blue that has gray undertones to it. In different lighting conditions, it can look either dark blue or dark gray. I think with the two-tone paint job on the Bronco with the white and this dark blue, I think it'll look really nice together. Let me know what you guys think about the colors in the comments below, and if you have any suggestions, please feel free to leave them. The only work I'm going to do to the body before I have it back on the road is the cleanup underneath. There's two small spots of rot that I need to cut out and weld in some new steel. Then I'm going to scrape down all the rust, spray a rust encapsulator on it, and some kind of undercar coating. I'll be tackling this in the next video. After I'm done with that, I'll strip down the frame, have the frame sandblasted, and paint it chassis black. The current suspension setup is a 4-inch lift kit by Superlift. It's their soft ride suspension. I put this on when I did the 3/4 ton axle swap, and I've been very happy with it. Although it's been on there for a long time, it only has about 10,000 miles on it, so I'm going to go ahead and reuse the coil springs and the leaf springs. However, I am going to upgrade to a long arm suspension in the front. I'll be keeping the rear Dana 60, it has 410 gears in it. I will be installing a Detroit locker in it. Up front I'm going to keep the 8-lug Dana 44, but I will be installing a Detroit True Track up front. My ultimate goal for the Bronco would be to drive it up the Alcan Highway, into Alaska, all the way up to Prudhoe Bay, right up to the Arctic Ocean. That's always been my dream road trip. Just take my time, camp and fish on the way up, and on the way back, not have a real schedule. I think that would be the ultimate road trip. Keeping that in mind, I want to set it up so it can be used as an overlander, as an off-road vehicle, or just as a daily driver. I have some ideas on how to set up the overlanding equipment so it can be permanently mounted to the vehicle, but also easily removable so I don't have to deal with the extra weight. I'll get into those details in a later video. I also want it to be as reliable as I can make it, and capable of pretty much anything I throw at it, on or off-road. I'm not going to be doing any real heavy rock crawling or anything like that in it, but I do want it to be capable to go wherever I want to go with it. I plan to do this project in 3 phases. The first one is just to get the Bronco back on the road and to make it mechanically sound. The second, I'll tackle the bodywork and the paint and the interior, make it nice. and the third will be to set it up for overlanding and for road trips. As far as the engine, I'll be sticking with the 400 that's in it. I'll be doing the normal machine work to the block and cleaning up the heads a bit. I'll be using the Tim Myers 0 deck height pistons that will give me about a 9.3 to 1 compression ratio, and I'll be using the Edelbrock Performer Plus camshaft and intake manifold. I'm going to correct the valve timing back to 0 degrees to clean up what the factory does with the retarded valve timing. I plan on using the Holley Sniper fuel injection unit and an HEI ignition that's controlled by the fuel injection computer. My estimates on this will be right about 300 horsepower at 4,000 RPM and somewhere about 420 foot-pounds of torque at about 2,800 RPM. These are only estimates, but I think they're pretty accurate. I know there are some that'll say it needs more engine than that, but considering this almost doubles the factory horsepower and will keep good driving characteristics, I think I'll be very happy with the setup. As far as the drivetrain and suspension, I just had the transmission rebuilt. Incidentally, that's the only work that I actually sent out to have done. There's nothing special in it, just a mild shift kit using quality parts. The transfer case I'm going to rebuild myself, just refresh it with new bearings and new seals. The rear axle is the Dana 60. I'll be installing a Detroit locker, and it has 410 gears in it. The front axle is the heavy-duty 44. It's the 8-lug Dana 44 with a Detroit True Track up front and 410 gears. I'll stick with the 4-inch soft ride Superlift suspension. For the tires, I don't know what size I'm going to go with. Typically I've run 33-inch tires on them. I may go up to 35s. I've even been looking at going to a metric tire, which would put it right about a 34-12. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with that. If you have any suggestions, please leave your comment below. I'd love to hear them. As far as other upgrades and work that'll be done, I'm going to replace the entire cooling system, new radiator, new hoses, everything. All new fuel system, new tank, new fuel lines, new electric fuel pump for the Holley Sniper fuel injection unit. For the steering, I have a blue top steering box, a Bargeson steering shaft, and I'll be replacing all of the ball joints and steering linkage. I'll be rebuilding the brakes that came on the 3/4 ton axles. I'll also be installing a hydraulic brake booster and all new brake lines and parts. I'll probably end up replacing the rear drum brakes with discs, but I haven't decided yet on that. I'll also be rebuilding the electrical system, doing a complete rewire, all new switches, new lighting. I'll be setting up dual batteries with an isolator, and I'll be using a 175 amp alternator. Well, that about wraps up this video. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, please type them below. I'd love to hear them. If you like this video, please make sure to click the like button below. If you would like to follow along with the progress of the build, please make sure to subscribe to the Project Mayhem Bronco Channel by clicking on the subscribe button below. And that's about it. Thanks for watching.